Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I'm Naren Arulrajah, the founder of the Veterinary Business Podcast and one of the co-hosts. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing, finance, leadership, HR, law, and much more. Whether you are a practicing veterinarian, a practice owner, practice manager, or a student studying to be a veterinarian, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. Don't forget to sign up for us on iTunes, YouTube Music, Spotify, any other podcast platform you use. Today, I'm excited to have Dr. Kelly Cooper with me. She's a veterinarian and she's the founder and owner of Reality Vet Coaching and Consulting. The topic we're going to touch on today is called How Turning Your Vision into Action Can Change Your Life and Career. And, being able to talk to someone who's been there, done that as a practicing veterinarian, I think is awesome. So, Dr. Cooper, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing? And if you don't mind, for those who haven't heard of you before, who are you? What should you tell us who you are? How did you get into veterinary medicine? And kind of, walk us through your career up to today, if you can.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you for having me on the podcast, Naren. Very happy to be here today. So about me, yes, as many of us have had variable career paths in veterinary medicine, I have somewhat of a unique story, I feel like sometimes. So I was one of those kids that wanted to become a veterinarian at a very young age. And I loved animals and rescuing them. And, I thought this would be the thing for me. So I ended up, I had worked my way through college, ended up in veterinary school, and then decided to go out to a little small town in Southeast New Mexico to work at a practice. And I ended up, within a couple of weeks of being at that practice, was alone running this practice for the owner, who retired a little earlier than anticipated. He had an injury. And so he kind of moved away to another city. He was ready to retire. And so I guess he decided I was his succession plan without telling me so. And yeah. So 2 weeks out of school, I am learning how to be a veterinarian, and I'm running a practice with absolutely zero skills in people, like communications, people leadership, business management. And I ended up meeting my then husband in that town and bought that practice 1 year later, and then spent the next 15 years trying to figure out how to become good at running a business and working with people. And I went from being a pretty horrible micromanager that was perfectionistic, hard to please, very driven, and all those things. And then by the end of my tenure there, from just kind of developing over the years and just lots of learning and growth and development, had a team that I would call a level 5, like a level 5 tribe that was just high performing, and we pulled highly engaged, high retention. Clients loved us, came from hundreds of miles. And so that was phenomenal, right? And so just that journey was a very interesting and long journey. And then I decided I wanted to try something else. As much as I love practice, I wanted to do more of developing others. Did
you say Eastern Mexico, right?
Southeast New Mexico, yeah.
You were speaking Spanish, or you can't speak Spanish?
I speak a little Spanish, not enough. Don't put me on the spot, Naren.
How did you run a practice for 15 years or quite a few years? So I assume you could speak.
Yeah. Most of my clients, New Mexico, not Mexico. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's funny when I travel, people will be like, New Mexico. I was like, no, New Mexico. It's in the States. But I mean, I had quite a few Spanish speaking clients. I usually have people on my team that spoke Spanish, and I know enough to get by. Like I definitely can handle the basics. So, but yeah, and I study Duolingo today. I still take Spanish every day for like 3 years now. I'm always honing my Spanish skills. So I ended up, I love that practice. I was a big part of that community, and the rural independent, like the rural mixed animal practice definitely has its own culture to it. And so, but I wanted to see what else I could do in the industry. I thought, when I graduated school, being a practice owner was the end all be all of a career. And you did that until you retired and you sold your practice, right, and went off into the sunset. And what I realized is I had developed a passion for developing people and making them the best they could be at what they did. So I started looking for jobs, and I thought maybe I'd get an industry job, be out there and be a veterinary specialist.
What year was this?
This was 2000, this is the end of 2010. So we'd been getting kicked around by the recession for a few years as well. And that impacted a lot of the business revenue that we've been fighting against. And it was, I think it was time to find something else. Yeah. So I started looking for jobs. And at the time, Banfield Pet Hospital was hiring a lot of district managers. And I didn't know a thing about Banfield Pet Hospital. But I did some research and discovered from some good friends that it was a great time to get involved. And so I threw my hat in the ring to see if they would hire a small town doctor. And so they hired me, and I went to work in Oklahoma, where I was a district manager, and 35 doctors reported to me. And so I moved to Oklahoma, moved my family there, and I was in that role with Banfield for about 6 years, and had great performance. We had great success. I learned a lot about corporate life. And then I was promoted to the regional vice president position, followed by divisional vice president position. And at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, I had not been in the role long for a national position where I was in charge of basically all the hospitals on the medical side. So all 1,000 hospitals rolled up to me, and I, led vice presidents who led, district managers, and, just several layers. So it was really great. Received a ton of development, loved working there, and was in a senior leadership role. And I did that for a couple of years. I moved into a role I relocated to Portland and went into a role that was more project leadership and project management at an enterprise level. I did that for like a year and a half, and I discovered I really wasn't loving it. Like that work was not.
You left Banfield and you started doing
this. Is still Banfield. No, this is still Banfield. And the work did not align really with my passions anymore. I'd kind of gotten far away from the hospitals and developing people. I had a team of like 2, and there were times where I'd had a team of, 30. And so I just decided to take a break, and I decided to leave and took some time off to regroup and say, well, what do I really want to do? Like, what's missing that I want to do? And I decided that I had a great coach. I've had coaches for years, and I had this amazing coach that helped me see that really what I wanted to do, I'd gotten to do at Banfield for a while, but was no longer doing that. And that involved really developing people and teaching them all those things I learned over the years, right? So business, people leadership, client communications, just all these components that you don't get in veterinary school. So I said, well, why not develop my own coaching and consulting business and do exactly what I had been able to do before. So after I left, I decided I went back to practice just to kind of, get back in the trenches. I hadn't actively practiced for about 10 years. So I went down the street to work at a small independent practice a couple of days a week while I'm building, Reality Vet coaching and consulting. So here we are today, like 6 months later.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Were you doing a lot of development, like these 35 doctors who reported to you, were they all running their own practices, or were they just practicing medicine and they're a different team running practices?
Yeah. So in the hospitals, there would be a practice manager that ran the operations of the business. And then there were, associate doctors that worked there. And there would be a lead doctor that was called the chief of staff. And so I worked with all levels, right? I worked with practice managers. I worked with doctors. I worked with lead doctors. So some of them had leadership responsibilities and authority in the hospital working with their practice manager.
So let me just jump into this topic that we have for today. And I think it's a wonderful topic, and I think by going through this, we can really, provide some real value to a lot of the practice, managers and owners who are listening to this podcast, because it's all about how do you turn your vision into action and change your life and career. So what is a vision, and why is a vision statement important? And I think maybe you can hopefully personalize it, tell us a story, maybe your story or your client's story, is the vision something like, this is what I want for my life? So help me kind of untangle it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and I've been really passionate about this topic for a bit. I've been writing about it on my website too, because what I'm finding with my clients is we have to always start with this first. This is like begin with the end in mind, is as Stephen Covey says. And if we don't really know where we're going and why we're going there, there's not a lot of passion or energy for it. Like if we're just checking boxes or we think we're doing it because somebody else thinks we should do it, it doesn't go that well. And so, as I just shared in my own story, I had a vision. I wanted to be a veterinarian. Then I became a veterinarian. It's like, okay, now what do I want to do? I want to be a practice owner. And then I was a practice owner. It's like, well, what type of practice owner do I want to be? And, where do I want to go? And I found myself, I had two major career changes. One was moving from being a practice owner to working in corporate medicine. And the second was moving from corporate medicine, or even just moving through leadership. Those were several changes there. And then leaving corporate medicine to go to just be on my own, right? Entrepreneurship again, and be a business owner and go back to practice. That was a big leap for me. So personally, my coach, when I was struggling in my job at Banfield, and I just knew I did not see a path forward. She led me through a visioning exercise. She asked me, says, do you want to do this? Let's kind of walk through this. And through that exercise, just helped me recognize that I wasn't, I was trying to move away from something, but I wasn't moving towards something. And when you have a vision, you are moving towards something that aligns with who you are as a person and with your values. And so when we went through that, it helped me really, I put a bunch of sticky notes up on the wall and I was like, okay, I want to do this. I don't want to do that. This is really what I'm looking for. That helped me boil down the path I needed to take to achieve, because I could have gone to work for another corporation. I could have gone and been a senior leader somewhere else, right? Those were options, but it did not align with what my vision was for my life and for my career. And so with my clients, same thing is true. Is when we're starting. So I have one client that just opened a practice about a year ago, and she's just trying to survive, right? She's trying to get the basics and understand. But when we took a step back and I said, okay, so what in the big picture do you really want to accomplish? And we ended up talking about her retirement and talking about the practice that she wants to sell. What's the practice that she wants this to look like one day, and that she could retire at 55 and have all these things accomplished. And once we were aligned on that, and she was clear on that, it changed our conversations. Said, okay, so this is the end. This is where we want to go. Are the things we're doing today going to get you there? Or are we just doing these things because you want to check a task off and make sure you're getting it right? Or does it get you to your ultimate goal in your career? And for her, it was like a retirement conversation. I have another client, it's just the next 5 years, is what she's getting. How does she get to a point where she can work less is her goal, in the next 5 years, because she wants to play more. It's like, okay, great goal. Let's figure out how to do that. But I find if we don't do that, we tend to wander around a little bit and not make good use of our effort and our time. And I think that's true of anyone, not just in a coaching situation, but just in life.
So is this a vision or a goal? It sounds like a goal or objective, right?
Oh, starts with a vision. Vision first. You have to have the vision, right? You have to have something that you can see and envision for yourself. That is the big picture. But from the vision, you move it into a goal.
Right. So how do you create a vision statement? Maybe you can give me an example of a vision statement.
Sure. Well, I think it's several parts. One is you have to, I actually created this little vision exercise, like a little meditation exercise to help get someone in the right headspace of doing this. And first, it's like, you got to be in a quiet space, in a creative mindset, where you're open thinking and anything's possible. I think that's the first important thing. And then you think about your values, like what is important to you? What are the things that really matter in your life in the big picture, either today or in the future? And then what do you want? What do you not want? Right? Like what are the lines that you want to draw? What does success look like to you? who do you admire? Who's out there, either in your colleagues or in the career field, or maybe just in the world that you find to have very admirable properties and you want to, to be like them, and then you take all that together and you turn it into, a statement that says, when I, 20 years from now, I would like to, I'll just share mine because it's kind of interesting. It's so different than it was 20 years ago, is that I said, 20 years from now, I see myself living in a cottage in the country, and I'm writing and I'm coaching others, and I'm kind of living an easier life because I've been living a very intense life, for a long time, is that I'm making time for my family and for relationships. And I am, giving back to the profession in this way. This is how I do that. So that's my vision, right? It's hard to, that's not a goal necessarily, right? It's a picture of what I want. And so when I coach people through doing that vision, it's the same thing, is think about all these things that matter to you. Just write them all down. Don't let anything get in your way. So if you start thinking about, but what if that, I'd have to make this happen, it'll just shut down the whole process, and just let all of those things go. Think big, reach for the stars and write it all down. And then you can deal with those issues later. The how, right? The tactical, can I make this happen or not?
Makes total sense. Yeah, I appreciate that. Can you give us a vision statement for maybe one of your clients? I know you're not going to give it names.
I don't know that I could, Naren. I don't have anything handy, and I don't want to, give away anything somebody's working on. They're so personal, right? They're just personal. But I mean, just as an example of, if I kind of consolidated several of them, I want to retire at age 55. I'm maybe working a day or two a week. I'm planning to retire. I'm selling my practice for millions of dollars. I'm very engaged in my community, and I'm spending time with my kids or my grandkids. And it's kind of like, and this is the work that I'm doing. My work is specifically around small animal medicine, maybe, as an example. They lay out all these kind of components, and you bring that into a statement together.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So now from the vision statement comes goals. So how do you create actionable goals? So let's take your example. You're very forthcoming about your vision statement. Give me an example of an actionable goal, and perhaps then we'll dive a little bit onto our veterinary practice and how, what would that look like?
Sure. So the goal, and keep in mind, if you visualize this as a map and a journey, and you're looking off to a far off peak, and that's where the vision is, then there's a road, right? There between here and there. And we work backwards. So we start with, what is the long-term goal? And the long-term goal is what gets you to the vision, right? That's closest to the vision. Be the vision, maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 20 years, maybe it's 5 years. But it's like, okay, for me to be living in that cottage and to be writing books or, coaching people, what am I doing there? It's like, okay, that means, X amount of my time is spent working. This amount of my time is spent not working. I am, I'm spending this much time writing. I have moved to this place, where this cottage is. And so that's my own personal one. For a client, it's interesting because we write out we turn it from this vision into, I like to use SMART goals. I think it's a very easy way to help turn something unmanageable into something very manageable and specific, because, with that SMART goal, you have something, and it's an acronym, right? It's so SMART is specific, and that means you can see it, you can do it. It's, you can turn it into something you write on paper. Is it measurable? And measurable can mean anything from, it actually has numbers attached to it, to you can check it off, right? You can see you did it, and yes, it happened. Is it attainable, right? Is it something that you can do? Actionable. So it's something actually that you do. Realistic. Is this something that's either realistic or relevant? Is the R's, right? Either one of those. Does it align with your goal or with your vision? And then time bound, which to me is the magic sauce, because when you put a timeline on it, it makes it real. It's like, I'm going to do this in 10 years. I'm going to do this in 2 weeks, right? When you say that, you're like, oh my gosh, this is real. I'm really going to do this. So again, take that vision, and then we're going to boil it down into what are you doing and what's happening. So like if we're shooting for 20 years, then I'm saying, okay, a long-term goal, let's say 10 years, let's cut it in half, right? So what are you doing in 10 years to get you to that vision? And it means, for one doctor, it means 3 doctors work in my practice, and she's at a single doctor practice right now. I'm working 2 days a week in the business and maybe 2 days a week on the business. I am spending, like 3 days a week with family, and I'm traveling, like 4 times a year. I'm taking a vacation. I have a practice manager. I have, they're putting all the pieces in place that help them see that, to get them to that endpoint. So that's the long-term goal. And then we take it into a short-term goal, which basically just half the 10 years. And now we're at 5 years, and 5 years is actually very soon. So, so if you're going to have 3 doctors in 10 years, how many doctors are you going to have in 5 years? Are you going to have 1 more doctor? Are you going to have 2 more doctors? Do you have a practice manager at that point? How many days are you working in the business? What skills or development have you achieved to get to this point also? Like what have you learned? What have you done? And then, so that's kind of our mid goal. And then we do a now goal. And I'll often frame it as a now, near, far goal. So far might be the 10, near is the 5, and now is now. It's 1 to 2 years right now, which means we're writing down action items that start today as far as getting to the now goal. And the now goal might be open up a position for a new doctor. It's do a financial analysis to see if I can afford another technician. It is understanding the profitability of my practice. It is, it's understanding, do we need more space to make this happen, or can we work in this facility? And so that really gets it. So the rubber meets the road of, okay, if I'm going to be here in 5 years, I've got to get busy right now on these things to achieve that thing.
Absolutely. Thank you for the explanation. I totally understand how you go about doing this. So the vision, the long-term goal, and then the short-term goals. You talked about, some long-term goals and short-term goals, but in your mind, why are both of them important? And I'm going to throw a curveball. I'm just going to ask it because I'm kind of going through this similar to what you're going through, right? I accomplished a lot of my business goals, financial goals, built a very successful large business.
Yeah.
And now what? So like recreating the whole goals. And then I'm wondering, is it a goal or is it more of how do I spend my time? Or, and then also what you think will be fun or enjoyable, you find is not fun or enjoyable. You know what I mean? Kids, for example, or they want to have their own life. So you think you want to spend time with them, but they don't want anything to do with you, but forever, but for a certain phase of their life, right? So it's kind of really, really, tricky. I think business to some level is simple because it's numbers and money, and it's kind of like an outside thing, but life is a lot more complicated and tricky, right? Because you can't force your son or daughter to do something, or
Of course it is. It is. Well, the thing is what's nice about the exercise is none of this is carved in stone, because your priorities will change. Everyone's priorities will evolve and change over time. I thought I was going to own a veterinary practice for 30 years and sell it and go into the sunset, right? I'm not doing that anymore, and I've done other things. And so I think it's remembering that whatever you write is going to evolve, and things won't all play out like you think they will play out, especially, maybe in business or in life. Is if you say 5 years from now, I want to be here, and then something significant changes and comes and changes your perspective, and you decide, I don't want that anymore. Like, I really don't want to do that. You get to rewrite it and start over. And quite often, I'll set goals with clients, or we'll set action items to do. And when we meet again, they're like, I didn't do that. I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's your thing, right? It's your action item. Yeah. If you think you want to do it and you don't do it, it probably wasn't a priority for you. Right. And should you just not let it go? Or if you get there, you're like, yeah, this really wasn't what I thought it would be. I don't know that I want to pursue this. What's amazing in our world of achieving, perfection that we try to do is there's no right answers here. there's no right or wrong. There's only what you want and what you need, as the individual. So I think that's the beauty of it as well, is it's a path. And, you asked Naren about, is it a goal, or is it, is it just something you're doing? I feel like with the leaders that I've worked with in my own personal, experience, there's a lot of ways to lead, but you can be reactive to what's happening around you constantly, right? In firefighting, or you can make something happen and move it forward. And it's reactive leadership versus proactive leadership. And everyone I've worked with as colleague, or as maybe I would manage them, I noticed that nobody wants to be reactive all the time, right? Everybody wants to be going somewhere and heading towards something where they're making a difference, or they just tend to lose their engagement with what they're doing. And so I always, when I was in corporate medicine, the company always had its plans, and here's what we're doing, right? And here's the next program. But myself and my partner, we had a vision that we were going to reduce turnover for doctors. Like that was our big picture, is a long game kind of thing, because we were coming from a place of really terrible turnover, and it took us 2 years, I think two good years, and we got our turnover down to like nothing, but it was 2 years. And in the meantime, the company, we had other initiatives and things we had to get done, but we stayed true to that goal. We wrote it down. We're like, we're going to do this. We're going to achieve this. And we didn't waver from that. And what's exciting is when you can get there and you look back and you're like, hey, we wrote this down and we actually did it. Like this was the thing. And it was something I'm most proud of is at a regional level, we have my regional team, we had the lowest turnover in the practice, in the history of the practice, by doing that, right? By sticking to a plan and seeing it through, because we had a vision. We got turnover down to like 11% for doctors, we would financially win as well, right? Like not only does the practice win, but the region won.
Thank you. Last question. How do you turn these goals into actions?
Yeah, so it's pretty similar to making a goal, but really that's where the SMART concept comes into mind. So if we look at that short-term goal, then and if it is, I want to be a 2-doctor practice in the next 3 years, then you write an action plan. It's like, okay, step 1, what is the one next thing that you have to do? There's a book I love by, I think, David Allen called Getting Things Done. And he talks a lot about what's the one next thing. And the one next thing, if I'm going to get another doctor in my practice, is I need to write down what is that doctor going to do? And I need to create a job description for that doctor. That's the one next thing. And I'm going to do that by this date. And then the one next thing after that is I'm going to go online and I'm going to post it, right? That's the next thing. So it is taking that bigger goal of hiring another doctor and turning it into the steps you need to get there that help create personal accountability. Someone else can hold you accountable if you have a coach or an accountability partner, and it just moves things forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. As we kind of bring this to a close, any final thoughts, Dr. Cooper?
Oh, gosh. Thank you very much for the time. It's been great to talk to you about this, Naren. And I hope that, for anyone listening, that if you are just kind of floundering around or struggling with where you're at right now, take a minute and go through this exercise. You don't need someone to walk you through it. I mean, you can also Google it online, how to do it, but to just sit down and think about those values. And if you are unhappy and floundering, why is that? How does that align with your vision of what you want for yourself? And then just take the steps to create this journey, because it's life-changing. I'm in a much more content and happy place right now doing what I'm doing than what I was doing 3 years ago, because I went through this exercise. And so I find it's always really valuable. It doesn't take a lot of time. I have one online on my website, which is realityvet.com. I did a little audio thing. It's kind of corny, but it gets the job done. Just take a minute for yourself, right? And make this plan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cooper, for joining us today and talking to us about how turning your vision into action can change your life and career. We appreciate it very much. I also want to take a moment to thank all of our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. We cannot do what we do without you. If you like this podcast, please share it with your colleagues and friends on social media. Also, please don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platforms. Your reviews will help other doctors and practice owners find us. Until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and pet parents. Wishing all of you an amazing week ahead.